Close your eyes for a moment. I want you to picture a photograph, not just any photo, your photo. Maybe it's from 5 years ago, maybe 10. Maybe from a time when everything felt lighter. You're smiling in that photo, but it's not the smile that gets you. It's the eyes. They look different, softer, younger, like they haven't yet learned the weight of certain truths. And somewhere, deep in your chest, a quiet voice whispers something that stops you cold. I don't recognize that person anymore. That moment, that small, silent fracture, is not a crisis. It is an invitation. And today, I want to take you on a journey through what that invitation actually means. Part 1, how change really works. We've been taught to expect transformation to arrive like a lightning bolt, a dramatic moment, a movie scene, a single conversation that changes everything. But that's not how real change works. Real change, it arrives quietly. It arrives in the pauses between words, in the exhaustion you feel on a Sunday evening without knowing why, in the sigh you release, one you don't even notice you're releasing anymore. It's the moment you stop chasing people who were never really running toward you. It's the moment you stop explaining yourself to rooms that were never listening. It's the moment you silence. The very thing you once feared starts to feel like peace instead of punishment. Transformation is not an explosion. It is erosion, slow, patient, invisible, like ocean waves that touch a shoreline so gently, so consistently that one day you look back and realize the entire landscape has changed. You start noticing it in subtle ways. Old music doesn't hit the same anymore. Certain conversations feel hollow, like you're speaking through glass. You start craving solitude, not because you're sad, but because something inside you has become sacred, something worth protecting. The world hasn't changed. Your perception of it has. Part 2, where it begins, the wound. But here's what nobody talks about. Transformation doesn't begin with a vision board or a gym membership or a new year. It begins with a wound. For many of us, it begins in childhood. Imagine a small child walking across a creaking floor at night, trying not to make a single sound, because noise means conflict, and conflict means danger. That child learns very quickly. Silence is safer, and so they start to study people, obsessively. Facial expressions, tone of voice, footsteps, the way someone's mood shifts in the space of a sentence. Every emotional signal becomes data to decode, and somewhere inside that constant, exhausting decoding, they disappear. Maybe that child was you. You learned that love felt like something to earn, not something freely given. So you adapted. You became agreeable, careful, useful. You smiled when your heart was breaking. You stayed quiet when your whole soul was screaming. You bent yourself into whatever shape felt safest, because somewhere deep in your nervous system, you had learned the most dangerous equation. Safety lives inside approval. Psychologists call this the false self, not because you were fake, but because you chose survival before authenticity. Attachment theory tells us this clearly. Children will sacrifice their own truth to maintain connection. Because to a child, love isn't just emotional. Love is survival, so your biology adapted. Hyper-awareness developed. People-pleasing developed. Perfectionism developed. Your nervous system literally rewired itself to survive emotional chaos. But there is always a cost to adaptation. You became fluent in other people's emotions, while slowly losing the language of your own. Part 3, the mask. And then adulthood arrived, and it handed you a different question. Not who am I, but who do I need to become? And from that question, masks are born. The achiever who never rests. The caretaker who never asks for help. The stoic one who bleeds quietly in private. The endlessly strong one who holds everyone else together while secretly falling apart. Carl Jung called this the persona, the social identity we construct to navigate the world. And masks aren't evil. Everyone wears them. The danger comes when the mask becomes your entire identity. When performance replaces presence. When your whole life becomes theater, and you've forgotten you're the one acting. You smile on cue. You succeed on cue. You even break down on cue. Until one day, in a moment of devastating silence, a heartbreak, a loss, an ordinary Tuesday evening, You catch your own reflection and feel something terrifying. I don't recognize myself anymore. And here's what I need you to understand about that moment. That is not failure. That is the beginning. Part 4. The neuroscience of becoming. Transformation feels mystical, but underneath the poetry, there's science. Every thought you repeat strengthens a neural pathway. Every emotional pattern you rehearse trains your brain. Over time, those patterns become identity. They begin to feel permanent, inevitable, true. Neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity, the brain's lifelong ability to rewire itself through experience. Here's the extraordinary part. If you spent years rehearsing the belief that you are unworthy, your brain built an entire architecture around that belief. But the same brain that learned fear can also learn freedom. The same neural pathways that encoded shame can be reshaped around self-respect. The same mind that learned to shrink can learn to expand. This is why awareness is the beginning of everything. Transformation does not begin with motivation. It begins with noticing. The moment you pause, even for a single breath, before repeating an old pattern, a new possibility appears. That 1 second of awareness. It changes the entire equation. Part 5, the dark night. But I need to be honest with you about something. Real transformation is not comfortable. It is not a highlight reel. There comes a season in every genuine journey where your old life simply no longer fits. Conversations feel empty. Relationships feel distant. Your own reflection feels like a stranger. Mystics across centuries have called this the dark night of the soul. Psychologists might call it ego death. Either way, it feels like falling apart. And society will not celebrate you during this season. Society celebrates consistency, predictability, stability. The people around you have grown comfortable with the version of you they understand. When you begin to change, it unsettles them, because your evolution forces them to confront their own stagnation. That's why transformation becomes lonely. You outgrow conversations, environments, sometimes even people you deeply love, and nobody warns you how much that grief can weigh. But here is what I know to be true. What feels like destruction is reconstruction happening just beneath the surface. Like winter soil, frozen, silent, seemingly dead, quietly preparing for spring. Part 6, the return. Eventually something shifts. You stop fighting the process. You stop trying to resurrect old versions of yourself, versions that were never truly yours to begin with. And instead, for the first time, you begin listening to what is trying to emerge. You start setting boundaries, not out of anger but out of self-respect. You start being honest, not as a weapon, but as a gift to yourself. You stop running from your darkness and begin understanding it. The anger, the fear, the grief. You realize those weren't enemies. They were messages. Healing begins the moment you stop rejecting yourself. And slowly you understand something profound. Transformation is not becoming someone entirely new. It is remembering who you were before survival forced you to forget. The child who dreamed freely. The version of you untouched by other people's fears. That self never disappeared. It was simply waiting for your permission to return. So now, go back to that photograph. Look at the person in it. They weren't weak. They were becoming. Every heartbreak was a doorway. Every collapse was a clearing. Every painful ending was the universe making room for something more honest. You were never meant to stay the same. You were meant to fall apart and rebuild more truthfully. Carl Jung called this individuation, the integration of pain, shadow and potential into wholeness, not perfection. Wholeness. And the fire inside you? It was never gone. It was only waiting for the one thing it needed most, for you to stop fearing your own ashes. The storm is not your enemy. You are the eye of it.